Okay, so today we have Miss Stark
and Miss Main,
and we are going to be doing a writer's notebook example using the Pants on Fire text that we saw during the close reading presentation.
Yeah, so we're going to start with just generally answering, step one being generally answering the chapter question. So you'll have a list of writer's notebook questions. So this kind of matches what you all have going for Lord of the Flies, but we're going to be using the Pants on Fire example. So our chapter question is, how do power dynamics shape interactions and relationships? And we're just going to answer this generally first. So what do we think, Miss Stark?
So I think the first thing that I would say about power dynamics is that I think it puts strain on relationships. And it can make it difficult to fully be vulnerable and be yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it makes it difficult to fully be yourself because whether you are in a position of power or under someone in a position of power, it could put you in a weird spot to maybe not fully express how you're feeling based on the position that you're in. So I don't know, I see one as like overarching and then maybe one like as a follower. We have leaders and followers kind of, in the activity we did at the beginning of this book. That can make how you express yourself more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I think being in a position of power means that you are more likely to, feel confident and feel, but you still have this need or desire to keep yourself looking powerful, right? You have that, you need that appearance. And I think we see that, we will see that in the text.
Okay. And then the second part of the question is, also how do they shape relationships? It might not just be a relationship between the person with power and without. No matter what position you're in, it could affect those around you. So you might start acting a specific way with other people in your life based on a position of power you may or may not hold.
Yeah. Yep. I think both when you have and when you lack power, that shapes how you interact with others. You might be more confident if you have power, or maybe even less confident, right? Maybe again, going back to that, you have appearances you feel like you have to uphold.
So it's important that we answer this generally so that we understand the concepts that are in this question. Things like power dynamics, what do they do? How do they shape interactions and relationships? But what are we going to do with this general answer, and how are we going to apply it to step 2?
So you can see that we already have the quote listed here just to save time in the video, but let's take a minute to sort of talk about how we came to this prompt, or the quote to answer the prompt. And so the first thing that I want to note is that this quote actually doesn't talk about power, right? There's no explicit or really even, there is an implicit conversation about power, but we really have to dig to get there, right? But you can see that it talks about relationships, right? And so I want to talk about, and so I looked at this quote and I looked at how Kluev, or the author slash person in the personal narrative, how she looks at power and how that shaped her relationships with the people she grew up with, right? Or the girls in her class. And so the first thing that I had to do was sort of look at, when I was looking for a quote, I had to find, again, I'm not looking for Kluev to say, because of power, I felt this way.
Yeah, or power is, right? The prompt is a lens.
Yep.
And you use that lens to then decide what could fall under a question like this. Where is there a conversation about power? It might not be explicit, right?
And in this case, it really isn't. Whereas we can talk about power, and like there are different things that I'll point out in order to address power, but it's not an explicit conversation.
Exactly.
Do you want to
Read the quotation?
Yeah,
I'll
start
do
there.
that. With my fabrications, I became the captain of the ship, not just a wistful passerby, breath fogging the pane of glass that stood between me and the girls I venerated. No longer could I only see, not touch. A lie was a bullet, and the barrier shattered.
There's a lot going on here. I kind of want to start with fabrications.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Because I love this. I love this word. I love this phrase because she could have said with my lies, but she said fabrications, which is almost sort of like a creation of. It's like a story. It's like it's got a positive spin on the word
Story,
lies,
yeah.
you know?
Story of lies. More
It's like-
positive
yeah.
connotation. Yeah, it obviously fabrications, like I took the time to craft something.
Yes, it's something I crafted. Yeah, but I think that's important too because that talks about her underlying motives here, right? This isn't something that she is a chronic liar, but she's not just a chronic liar, right? She's somebody who really wants to fit in, and so this really gets to that motivation.
Yeah, maybe like power fitting in.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that word became also implies that she wasn't before, right? It's with her fabrication she became, right? There's that implication of before I wasn't able to do this.
Wasn't it included before?
Yeah. Yep.
Captain, position of power, right? Head of a ship. We see kind of the...
I think even it being ship, right? This idea of like, not only are you leading people, but you're like taking a journey. There's this like destination sort of
Yeah, now in control of the journey. Because I also think like there's a sense of control when you're a captain. Right? You decide you make the choices.
Exactly.
Okay.
Also, can we talk about this? It says just here, not just a wistful passerby. But I want to add that to the same comment as only down here.
Oh,
And
yeah, just and only.
Yeah, these ideas that. So what she's doing in this quote is she's setting up who I am and who I became.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Who I am is this, and we'll talk later about wistful passerby. But this idea of just and only is who I am, right?
It's conditional.
Yeah, and it's this idea that not good enough, right? I'm just me or only this, right? I can only see, I can't participate sort of thing, right? And so this
Power of
who I
insecurity.
am is this insecure lack of power. Who I became through the lies is somebody more powerful, somebody more a leader, somebody able to take more of a participative role in the group.
Definitely. Okay, so yeah, I see the connection between these terms, and oftentimes when they use it earlier in the sentence, you're going to see it repeated as well to emphasize the message further. So pay attention to the pattern of words that might be used to further emphasize. So a wistful passerby. What do we think about this? Passerby is kind of just this whole phrase itself is somebody that just comes by for a second. They don't hang out long, right? So. With my fabrications, I became the captain of the ship, not just a wistful passerby. This saying, I'm actually in more control because I'm the captain. I'm not just passing through and not creating an impact, right? So that's kind of what I hear from this.
Yeah, but
this
longing
emphasizes,
to.
longing to. This emphasizes this would emphasize a lack of power, but she's saying, I have power.
Yeah, but I think that shares that again, I want to say that sets up the juxtaposition of she's saying, through my lies I became the captain, but before I was this passerby, right? And so this idea of again who I am versus who I became, right? And so again there's that juxtaposition of this is who I feel like I actually was before I like started lying to everybody. And so
of the before and after.
Yeah. And again that relates to like motivation and things like that.
Right. Yeah. We'll draw an arrow.
I think too breath fogging, I kind of like the breath fogging is also goes back to that like longing sense of wistful, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this idea of like I
think the imagery of that.
Yeah.
Imagery of longing.
Yeah. You're like staring at the window.
Staring.
As it's cold outside,
Staring out. Yeah. I see that connection to longing. So the choice of imagery here. definitely. The pane of glass. And just obviously we know breath fogging happens on glass, but anytime glass is used, it's very reflective, right? Reflective and thinking about, what was I with this sort of power? What was I without it? But just having glass is reflection.
I also talked about glass here because glass is see-through, right? And so there's this obstacle that's between her and the other girls, right? Later in the quote, she calls it a barrier. But this barrier isn't just an obstacle. It's not a mountain that she has to climb and she gets to the other side. It is glass, meaning not only is it there, but it's see-through. So she has to watch people belong in a group and feel this, and so that's exacerbating or highlighting her own sense of a lack of belonging because she's watching she has to physically watch it while she doesn't feel included.
Well, I think that hits back on the relationships, right? How does it affect this affects how you are in other relationships.
Agreed.
When you see something happening in front of you, you react to it. And so I drew this line to connect these two because I think the word shattered also indicates that it's a glass barrier because glass shatters, right? That's one of the materials that can do that.
Well, if we're going to talk about shattered there, I think also too this idea shattered is like a sort of violent, right? It's like to break apart into a million pieces, and it's this idea of I can't just eliminate the barrier, right? I can't solve the barrier. I can't just climb the mountain or do whatever other metaphor for barrier that exists because there's like tons of them, right?
And the jagged edges of something when it shatters, how it leaves relationships.
Yes.
How are relationships left? Now, you might not be able to read every word I'm writing here, but the point is you're seeing how much like these terms I can find in here without seeing the word, right? So I'm able to make sense of what these different concepts and phrases and topics mean because I answered the question generally and I now have unpacked it. So let's keep going.
So I think that stood between me and the girls, I think that goes back to that idea of barrier. So the same things that we're talking about, right? Again, this idea of an obstacle, there's something between us. But venerated is interesting. And so I defined this for my students because venerated means to like hold in high regard or to esteem. And again, there's that irony because if we go back to this idea of relationships, right? She and power dynamics actually, right? She's looking up to these people. She has such a high regard for these people who she believes has this position of power, but then there's irony because now she's their captain, right? And so she flips the power dynamics and that changes their relationships. Obviously, now people are looking up to her.
Right. I also think if you want to get into like what choice you could identify here, we're doing a lot of different types of word choice and giving a description to what those types of words are. But we have like the physical like separational imagery of like stood between me and the girls. Like you have a barrier between the two. So you have two different types here. You have that like physical, and then you have us like unpacking the glass as well. No longer could I only see, not touch. A lie was a bullet.
I think that first part goes back to the wistful passerby, right? Like again, she's setting up who I am versus who I became, right? Who I am.
Could I?
Yeah.
Am verse before.
Yeah.
I could only see, not touch.
I think see goes back to that pane of glass, right? I have to watch you.
Glass. You can just at some point you can draw arrows between some of the concepts that you all are annotating because things start to connect. A lie was a bullet and the barrier shattered. Okay, we could think of something like, like this feeling of like hurt, right? Like what does a lie do? Like why compare it to this, right? So like great pains, like what does a lie cause, I guess.
Going back to that relationship connection, I like that. But I think also too, using a lie as a weapon, I think it's interesting that she doesn't use it as a weapon against the girls. She's using it against the barrier for the relationship. Yeah. And she's saying this is the obstacle that I need to overcome in order to feel that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
But again, I think that sort of like violent imagery does add to sort of a sense of desperation, right?
Yeah. And then you start to think about like power dynamics, like what will something push somebody to do in order to gain power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be lie or,
Mm-hmm.
be involved in, like, what's driving the power hungriness of that person that wants that leadership position or wants to get out of being that follower position, and override somebody else. So I think you could also have reasons to consider why somebody might participate in these different things like violence to achieve power.
Yeah, agreed. I think that that kind of connects to step 3B, right? This idea that like an imbalance of power will ultimately, I don't want to say just change, because like, in this case, I want to say in this case, it didn't end up for the bad because they accepted her when she like came out and said I was
right.
But ultimately it did create negative circumstances.
Yeah, it causes somebody to act outside their nature and create negative circumstances, would you say? Or, I mean, it doesn't always, but
I would say
create...
I would say it creates at least in terms of the relationships and the interactions with others, it creates a falsehood. It creates a disingenuous relationship with others. Because people are going to want to appear a certain way. They're going to want to, they're going to want to take control of the situation, and sometimes that can damage relationships.
So it can create a falsehood of relationships, and how connected people are. In the same environment, maybe. An imbalance of power creates a falsehood of relationships and how connected people
I think just leave it at how connected people can be there. I think end that.
Yeah.
Because that talks about the topics of, it's not necessarily written as a theme statement, but it talks about the topics of,
so we have
power dynamics,
power, relationships.
Yeah. And connected relates to that idea of interactions.
I also think I kind of want to talk about the word shape a little bit in a second sentence. Like what power drives you how to live out your life, like the different ways it can guide you and shape you.
I want to talk about appearance, right? Because I think that's a huge, right? This idea of power, trying to think of the right way to say it, but this idea that it really challenges us to appear a certain way. Do you know what I mean? And so we see it in this text where her appearance means so much to her that she's willing to lie.
Yeah. Okay, so power, sorry, repeat what you said so I can add it. The appearance.
Yeah. Creates, I would say maybe power imbalances even, or power dynamics create the need for an illusion to protect image or something like that.
The need, create the need for an illusion.
With an I this time.
Yeah. To protect image. Yeah. Just FYI for everybody. This one has an I. Different than A. You're seeing, more power dynamics as the word. I think shapes is important too. Like I wrote power shapes the choices one can make, which way to go, how to react. Because I think whatever position you're in, it decides how you might engage with somebody, and what your reaction would be. Like, are you supposed to be modeling? Are you supposed to be...
True.
Or not, maybe not supposed to be. Are you in a position to model? Are you in a position to react? Are you in a position to just do what your leader says?
I think that's a good point, because consider us like in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
We have a power dynamics with students.
Yeah.
And we hold ourselves to standards and expect other teachers to be held to standards where
exactly
we are going to appear a certain way and maybe not another.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of like controlling emotions, things like that,
Exactly.
or how you just approach problems in the classroom, things like that. So I think these power dynamics are all around us. This is just one example. But you'll start to notice when you answer these questions, these are things you all have dealt with on different levels. So we're really asking you to dive in this first step one, like answer the question generally. Think about real world implications of these topics and then apply it to the text. So that's why it's really just a lens for you to look at the writing.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.